this is Bonnie from Backward Story, and today I want to tell you a little bit about the 10 books that I read in October. And you'll see that there are a few books not in this shot. There are only 8 books in this shot, and I have a couple more that I read digitally. I guess I read 11 books this month because I have 4 digital books to show you, so I guess I've actually read 11 books this month. And so I want to tell you a little bit about them. This month did not go as expected. Spoiler alert, I had planned to read the entire Throne of Glass series because Kingdom of Ash just came out and I don't want to be spoiled. And then I also plan to reread Renegades and read Archenemies by Marissa Meyer since that comes out next week. And instead, I've had a lot going on the last few weeks and my brain just wasn't capable of processing new worlds and reinventing things, I think, and it just wanted things that were a little happier, and so I went on a complete contemporary binge, and I pretty much only read contemporary this month. And I read a ton of stuff that doesn't even come out until next year, just because it's all I wanted to read. So October didn't go as planned. November, those are the first books I'm hoping to read this month, now that it is officially November 1st. I'm just starting to read again this week. I wasn't reading for a couple of weeks, so we're gonna play it by ear, but that is the plan at the moment. So Ship It is technically the book that started my contemporary binge. New York Comic Con was at the beginning of the month, and I decided to do a video, which you may have seen, with some of the best Comic Con related books that you may want to read. And so one of the books was Ship It by Britta London, which I had not read yet. I had hoped to read it in July when it came out for San Diego Comic Con, and then I just didn't have time, so I read it now. And look at this cover, you guys. When you take the jacket off, it's the best. I'm obsessed with this cover. And this one centers around a girl named Claire, and Demon Heart is her favorite show, and she writes a lot of slash fan fiction, and she believes the 2 male main leads are destined to wind up together and live happily ever after. And so she goes to Comic-Con, and she asks a question on panel, and one of the actors laughs at her and says that, it's basically never going to happen, and everything kind of spirals from there. And as a PR stunt to get good attention, since they'd kind of gone off track with her questions, and they were trying to do some PR smoothing over, they picked Claire to be a blogger that they send on tour, and it is just her adventures with the cast and with the show and with her beliefs and the way they evolve and change over this press junket as they go through the various Comic-Cons going on in the country. So I read that, and then I just wanted to read books like it, and so next I picked up Karela by Ashley Poston, which I bought when it came out, and there's a sequel coming out next year called The Princess and the Fangirl, and I just felt like reading it, and so I did, even though, again, I had so much that I should be reading. If you don't know Karela, it is Cinderella, and it takes place at Comic-Con, basically, except it's its own Comic-Con for a show called Starfield that used to be really popular, and they're rebooting it, and they have a dance where everybody is in their cosplaying costumes, and instead of, like, a literal prince, he is, going to be the prince in the reboot, and, it's just so much fun. And I cannot wait to return to the world in 2019. And this is a book that I still love so much, and it's got really nice, thick paper quality. I'm really obsessed with this version. I kind of want to buy it again in paperback because they have added scenes from Starfield and some other stuff, so it kind of makes me want it again, but for now, I'm happy with what I have. So between Ship It and Karela, it just really started the binge, and that is all I wanted to read for the next couple of weeks. So first, I went to My Favorite Half Night Stand by Christina Lauren, which isn't out until, I want to say, December 4th? Yes. It comes out December 4th from Simon & Schuster Gallery Books, and it was a lot of fun. I didn't enjoy their last book, Hazel and Josh's Guide to Dating, as much as I did a couple of their previous novels. I really liked Roomies and Dating You, Hating You. This one I really enjoyed as well. This is one of my favorites by them, and it was a lot of fun. It's about this group of friends who, they're all professors, and there's going to be a dinner at the end of the school year with Barack Obama in attendance, and they all need dates, and so they all decide to go online and try out a dating service. And the main character, Millie, finds out that she is like 98% compatible or something like that with her friend Reed, and the guys are making fun of her for having a bad profile, so she decides to pretend to be her like alter ego and goes by her middle name, and he doesn't know it's her. So I don't want to talk too much about it, but it was a lot of fun and I really enjoyed it. Next, I read 99% Mine by Sally Thorne, and this is her second novel. Her first was The Hating Game, which everybody is obsessed with and still talks about. We all recommend it to one another. It's a great contemporary romance. It's an office romance. It's friends to enemies, so it's a trope everyone loves. Personally, I like the Dating You, Hating You a little bit better from Christina Lauren in terms of the same trope, but they were both really good, and I've been excited for her new book. And actually, I think I liked it better than The Hating Game. I liked it differently, but I liked it better. I liked the way the characters are. It is about twins, and they grew up with this boy, and he is both of their best friends, and now he is fixing up their grandmother's house, and sparks are flying, and this time maybe they aren't going to sweep it under the rug like they did growing up. And it was really good. It has family conflict because what do you do when you both have the same best friend and your brother doesn't want you to date his best friend, but it's your best friend too? And, it's got that kind of conflict mixed in as well. And it was just really enjoyable. I liked it a lot, and it comes out in January. So you don't have that much longer to wait. Next up, we had There's Something About Sweetie by Sandhya Menon, and I jumped on this book as soon as I saw the ARC available to download, and I have no regrets. I mean, it doesn't come out until May or June of next year. I really shouldn't have read it this early. I shouldn't have read it the day I downloaded it. But again, I was on a contemporary binge, and I was like, ooh, I really want to read it. I loved When Dimple Met Rishi and From Twinkle with Love, and I really want to read this as well. And it's funny because I originally didn't think that I would like it as much because we've met the younger brother in a previous book, and he just wasn't my favorite character, and I actually thought the story was going to be about him and somebody else completely, not to give spoilers, but I loved it. I love Sweetie. I loved her struggle with her weight and the way her mother treated her and the way other people treated her, but she was really so healthy, and it was like her bone structure, and sometimes you cannot control what you weigh, and you are the way you are, and it's about bone structure, and it's not about dieting and exercising. And Sweetie was such a healthy person, and I really love that that wasn't an issue, and she wasn't trying to lose weight, and she was happy with herself. And there's just so much I loved about this book, and I love the cover. It is from this really fun scene that I don't want to tell you anything about because of spoilers, but the cover is from a scene directly in the book, and I really loved it. I really shouldn't be saying much about it yet since it's so far out, and I got such an early copy, and I doubt many other people have read it yet, so I'm just going to stop and not really say anything at all about it, but it was really good. It's my favorite of the 3 books, and I cannot wait to talk about it more with you next spring. Next, I read Fame, Fate, and the First Kiss by Kasie West, and it is about a girl who wants to be an actress, and she's been in all of her school shows, and she doesn't really take the time to date boys because she thinks they're a distraction, and she doesn't want them to get in the way of her dreams and her goals, and she's finally been cast as a leading lady in a movie, and it's a motion picture. It's about zombies. The leading actor is pretty popular, and so she is finally getting everything she's ever wanted, but she's having trouble with on-set chemistry. She's never had trouble in the past. She's always been able to kiss on cue, but she's never been in a relationship, and she's never kissed anyone because she wanted to, and so that's starting to come out and be less believable because she doesn't really know how to interact and how to portray being so utterly in love. And she winds up developing feelings for her tutor, Donovan, who is a really good guy, and she kind of wants him to teach her about chemistry in the literal sense and not the academical sense, and he is not completely okay with that, and the two wind up falling for one another, and she winds up inadvertently learning what she needs to know. Again, this, I don't want to talk too much about it because it spoils the plot, but I love Kasie West. Her books are always really sweet and cute and fun, and this one comes out in February, and it was a book I really enjoyed, and I cannot wait to tell you about that one as well. A book I can talk a little bit about is one that just came out recently, A Very Large Expanse of Sea by Tara Mafi. And she was at a signing recently with Ransom Riggs, and I got to talk to them both. And it is such an important story. It takes place in 2002, a year after September 11th, and it is about a Muslim girl living and surviving in a world that hates her so much for things that were out of her control that she had nothing to do with. And they don't treat her as being American, even though she was born and raised in this country. But you really feel for her and her struggles and her family, and it's just this year where things start to change, and she becomes less angry and starts to fit in, and she even has her first relationship, which this book has one of my favorite kissing scenes of 2018, and I just love the emotion that is in the relationship and the back and forth and the uncertainty, and it is just very raw and very real, and it was really, really good. And when it ended, I wasn't quite ready to say goodbye yet, and I wanted it to be a little longer, and I wanted it to somehow... I can't talk about it, but it was really good. Definitely pick it up. It was such an important book. It was such a good book. I hope it wins awards in January, and I really loved it. I read 2 graphic novels this week. The first was Sanity and Tallulah by Molly Brooks, and I did a whole video just on this, which I will link to below, and I sat with Molly Brooks at the BEA dinner for Disney this past June, and I had never heard of her or her book, and I wish I had. I have so much more now that I would say to her, and it is about this girl who is a scientist who manages to clone a cat, and the cat's name is Princess Sparkle, Destroyer of the World, so each head on the cat gets its own name, and altogether it's one name, and it's fantastic, and it takes place on a space station, so it's very futuristic, very sci-fi, it's very STEM, and when the cat goes missing, the girls have to find it before something goes wrong on the space station because something is happening, and they think that it's not the cat's fault, so they put those smart brains together, and they try to figure things out, and it is so good. It is something that I want to get into the hands of every kid, teacher, and school, so pick this one up and give it as a gift this holiday season, or put it in your classroom. The other graphic novel that I read this month was Check Please, Volume 1, Hockey. It was by Blue Cozy Kazoo, and it is set in college, and it is about a boy who wanted to be on the hockey team, and he finally does, and his dream comes true, and he also loves to cook, and he's always baking cakes and pies and delicious things for his teammates to eat, and he's afraid to come out to them. He's afraid of what they might think of him, and it's just about the first 2 years of his life at college, and then a second volume is coming out that is going to chronicle years 3 and 4. I also read An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green, which I thought it was a standalone. Spoiler alert, it's not. If you go into this expecting it to be one book, you are going to be wrong, because it ends on this note where you're like, okay, I need to keep reading now, and there's a lot of unanswered questions, and I need to know all of these things, and so you're going to want to pick up the second book. So I did get a signed edition. It's got a Hankler fish on it, which was something that was special when he would sign for John Green for his books for the first run for Turtles All the Way Down and Fault in Our Stars. We have a Carl here, and it's just a fun sci-fi magical realism book that it's hard to talk about without spoilers, and I'm still wrapping my mind around what I personally thought of it. It wasn't my favorite book in the world, but I didn't hate it either, and I will be picking up the sequel when it comes out. And the last book I read was Trouble Brewing by Suzanne Ball. This just came out. It is a Simon & Schuster Gallery book, and it is a romance, and it takes place at a brewery. I looked at the title, and I thought it was going to be a book with, like, witches and stuff, and with the color palette, I thought it was going to be a fall book. It takes place in the spring. I just grabbed it off my shelf and went to work, and then I started reading. I was like, oh, this isn't a fall Halloween read, but it was still good. Piper has always wanted to own her own brewery, and she is really good at making beers and ale that people love, and she gets a chance to have her merchandise promoted in an upstart that is owned by Blake, and the two of them wind up falling for one another, and she really doesn't want to date him because she doesn't want others in the industry to think she got the job through who she dated, because it's very hard to be a female in the field, and she really fights against this attraction, and it is just the story about them, and Again, spoilers, I don't like to tell too much of the plot, but if you're looking for a sweet, fun romance, this is definitely one to pick up. And Blake is one of those guys who's very sweet and classic, and he's not the kind of guy that you always see, but he really is big on women's rights, and he's just got a lot of good qualities in him that are likable. So he's not the type of guy you see all the time in fiction, but he's one that definitely exists, and it was really fun to meet him and to see his story with Piper. So those are the 10 books I read this past month, and it wasn't what I expected. I thought it was going to be a very fantasy month for me. Instead, it turned out to be a very contemporary month, but I have no regrets. 2 of these books were on my list to read this month, and one of them was overdue to be read. A couple of them were, actually. Some of them were coming up, so it's not like I wasn't planning to read them anytime soon as it was. It just wasn't what I was expecting going into the month, and now I'm reading that stuff this month instead. So this is everything I read. Let me know if you've read any of it too, what your thoughts were. Let me know which ones you're looking forward to coming out next year, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye!